Hi everyone, it's Eli. You know how sometimes you stumble upon something truly game-changing in healthcare? Well, I found it. KinetiSense. This cutting-edge motion capture technology is transforming movement, assessment, and recovery. Imagine getting instant AI-driven insights without any wearables on your patient. That's right, no ping pong balls needed. Just pure, accurate data. Perfect for boosting athletic performance, pinpointing imbalances, and refining rehab. Top professionals worldwide trust KinetiSense to maximize productivity and results. Check out our partner page to learn more. Experience the revolution in movement. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More, the podcast that gives you a viewpoint in sports medicine that can't be found anywhere else. I'm your host, Eli Hallak, and we have a fantastic show ahead of us today. So, let's get started. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. Today, we have a very unique guest, and I'm kind of excited about it because as she laughs in the background, she's had a very interesting, up to this point, career. Very unique. It could inspire a few people because it is so unique and different. And we're ready to welcome certified athletic trainer, Katie Perez. How you doing today, Katie?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. This
You
is
bet.
actually something I've always thought about doing. So this is kind of really fun and cool opportunity that just kind of, you know, I was approached about, and you just never know. That's just kind of the best thing about life.
You don't. And that's kind of the fun thing, and if you end up doing this, let me know. I'll be a guest on yours.
Oh yeah, I
Sound
thought
good?
about it so many times. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be great. So currently, you are a talent acquisition specialist for an industrial setting athletic training hiring company. Is that correct?
Sort of. The company that I do work for, it's a traveling industrial company, so you potentially have to move for the roles. We're primarily in construction, and so in construction, projects end, projects, stop. So in that industry, there has to be a level of you being open to travel. It's kind of like traveling nurse contracts. That's similar to what it is. The cool thing about the company that is relevant to this conversation. It's completely ran and owned by athletic trainers,
Oh,
which is, yeah. So everyone in the company is an athletic trainer. That's probably the best thing about the company because you're working for people who understand what you are and are also providing the service to the client of the thing that is their profession, which is normal. You're normally working for a staffing agency that's using you as a subject matter expert to provide the services, and that is what makes the company very different. So,
that's very neat. Yeah, we've interviewed some clinical athletic trainers that work in the industrial field. And that's exactly what you said. A lot of them are just local, they're clinical, they're not run by athletic trainers. So that's a very unique perspective. That's very nice. Very
yeah,
nice.
I've learned a lot just about industrial construction, manufacturing, warehouses, and it seems to be the new cool fancy thing in athletic training right now.
Yes, it does. I even heard a cool new fancy name. The industrial athlete is what some of them.
Industrial athlete, yeah, you just
Yep.
throw an adjective onto the athlete, and that is the people that we take care of. So,
And a lot of people don't mind being called an athlete. So it's all good, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you got where you're at. You've had a very interesting and unique career. So let's talk about how you got into athletic training first. How did it get started?
It's actually a funny story. So, growing up really athletic, I did not have an athletic trainer at my school. I had 50 people graduating from my high school. It was
Whoa,
a
whoa, whoa, whoa,
small,
whoa, whoa, whoa. 50.
yeah,
Okay,
50.
just making sure I heard that right. Okay, cool.
Yep, nope, 50 boys and girls. It's a very small Catholic school. And so, we are in conferences with a lot of bigger schools that actually have way more money than we did. I played a bunch of sports. The school that I went to was grades like 7 through 12. So I made varsity when I was in ninth grade, which is really awesome and unique. I don't know if that would be the case if I went to a bigger high school, but it is what it is. And yeah, so I played a bunch of sports, but honestly, what I wanted to be when I grew up was an interior designer. And I still love interior design to this day. I went to a bunch of camps and I was really going to pursue it. And I volunteered in high school. I didn't volunteer, but I worked for a place in high school. And I actually had to apply to a program at school in order to get in. I got in, and I was doing that my freshman year. And then I don't know what happened to me, but I was like, I'm not going to be able to get a job in this when I grow up, like get older. And I had a moment freak out. And then I remembered this exact instance when I was in high school and I was at I played volleyball, soccer, I dove and I swam. I remember being at this private high school and like I got really hurt and there was an athletic trainer and it was like such a cool training room and I was like, what is this? Like I've always been definitely into helping people. I've always liked medical stuff. My dad's a pharmacist, so nurses in the family. I just remember sitting on the table and being like, what are you? Like, what do you do? And she was like, oh, I'm an athletic trainer. And I was like, wow, that's like so cool. Like, I would love to do that one day. And then I remember that experience. And then I pretty much went to I forget what they call it when you go and like switch majors. You like go to that office and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I went and talked to a bunch of like, at the time it was sports medicine, athletic training. Those are really like I wanted to be around medicine, sports, and they were like, yeah, we have an athletic training program. And I was like, and I just remembered that whole experience. And then that's all she wrote. And I haven't looked back since. And I graduated in 2012.
Oh my God, you make me feel old. Thank you so much. 2012. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. But that
Wow.
was from college. So
Okay. Thank you. That makes me feel a little bit
no,
better. I appreciate
that
that.
was from college. Yeah, I graduated from high school in 2008. So I've been at 13, 14, or I don't know, 12, 13 years right now. I rounded up to an even number. It feels like 15.
Some
And
days it feels like 20, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. So that's kind of how I came about athletic training.
And then right out of the gate, your first job, you're working at ESPN Wide World of Sports at Disney
Yeah.
World.
hmm
How did that happen? How cool of an experience too.
So I was actually, I think, the only person in my class that did not pass my BOC. I honestly am just terrible at standardized testing. And I had to take the second part of anatomy that semester just because of how the classes fell. And so I was just bad at anatomy and physiology. Not It's just all the other stuff, not really MSK stuff, like, well, I'm also bad at that too. Origins, insertions, like I'm just not good at it. And so I was taking that class as well. I had a heavy load that semester and I just didn't have the time to study. And I hate studying. So I just didn't prioritize it. And then so I didn't pass, which was awful and embarrassing, honestly. And I had to kind of pick up the pieces and I took off 3 months after I graduated. And I made Dean's List. Like it wasn't like I was bad in school, like I made Dean's List most of the semesters I was in school. So I took off 3 months. I studied really hard, probably the hardest I've ever studied. And then I passed it my second chance. And then I was obviously looking for jobs that whole time. I applied to a lot of grad schools and didn't get in. I'm from Virginia and I applied to a lot of the big schools, and it's very competitive in Virginia for, at the time, GA, graduate assistant
Of
positions.
course, of course.
Virginia Tech, James Madison, George Mason. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. That was the thing to do back then. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea that I wanted what I would get even a master's degree in. And that didn't pan out. And then I applied. I don't know how I found out about this, but I Googled and I saw the opportunity and it was already fit. Like the deadline had passed and I just reached out. That internship is actually for people that are still in school. So some people send their students down there and they weren't even BOC certified. I was actually the only one that was BOC certified at that internship because you're functioning under the licenses. And the whole point of that internship is to help you pass your BOC in like a clinical rotation almost. They called me and they said they had an opening and I took it. I just kind of figured it all out and made it happen. I'm definitely one to hop on an opportunity when it presents itself. kind of relates back to talent acquisition, but the amount of people that turn down even a conversation to talk about something is crazy to me. I've never once been like, no, I won't have this conversation because really, you don't know what you don't know until you know it or don't know it, you know?
Totally. I get
So
that.
yeah, jumped onto that. It was really hard, long hours. Pretty much they paid for your living expenses and then you got like a stipend pay every single day, which wasn't a lot, but then you would work and then not work. So it was fun for our first, experience. Plus you were doing like a lot of education and just honestly a really good review of everything. It was interesting because it was like a lot of things came through the ESPN, like the Old Spice tournament. So you got that collegiate experience. Cheerleading is a big thing. So a lot of like cool, big branded things come through the ESPN Wide World of Sports at Disney. Like the cheerleading national championship is there often. They also had a smaller league of like the Braves out there, so we had exposure to that. The slow pitch softball leagues all the time coming through there.
Oh, yes.
Huge soccer tournaments, And at one point, I was sitting in the middle of like six fields, and like you're out there for like 13 hours a day. That was the job. Really cool experience doing that. It was a good, like a slower, it wasn't slow in the sense of like the job was slow, but it was like easing into like getting some confidence, because a lot of the younger ATs, I wasn't that confident. And I think that that's because I'm very much the type of person that learns on the job versus someone that's good at the school department. Even though I did well in school, it was really hard for me to understand biomechanics and like kinesiology until I started watching people move and then learning from like other people. Unfortunately, during that time, I was playing indoor soccer down in Orlando and I tore my meniscus, which is my second knee surgery.
Makes it hard to work at that point.
Yeah, so I ended up going home early from that. It was a bucket handle tear, and it was like stuck for a while.
Oh, yes.
And
Know
and
it
so
well.
that they had to, suture it back down, and so I was on crutches for a long time, and so that's kind of the ESPN of my life, and then having to battle like my second knee surgery in the same leg. I had previously torn my ACL playing soccer in college as well.
You had a lot of exposure at that point to our
Yeah,
field in the
mhm,
wrong way, so to speak. Yeah,
yeah. The
understand
PT I
that.
was working with in college actually wrote my letter of recommendation to get into the athletic training program. He was awesome, awesome PT.
Would you like to give him a shout out real quick? What was his name?
I don't even feel like I can remember his
Oh, that's
name.
okay.
I don't even
That's
know if I can remember his name. He went to Duke, I do remember that,
well,
and it
there you
was, like,
go.
really interesting because in a lot of PT settings, like, all I did was lift weights with him. Like, I don't remember doing band work, I don't remember doing, like, I just remember I was straight up in a weight room, and all we did was weights, and I
Interesting.
yeah, I'm sure I did, like, and then during that time, I actually tripped and fell in the knee that I just had surgery and then fractured my kneecap in the knee that I had the bucket handle meniscus tear. So then I had to take off 6 weeks and do aquatic therapy,
Oh
non-weightlifting,
my God. Oh
because it
my
didn't
God.
fracture all the way, it was like a kinda like a down and like a Y
Splinter. Yeah.
through my patella on that left knee. Which kind of introduced me to what happens with aquatic therapy and learned a lot with that. And then working all my core stability, even though my knee was kind of out. So then, like, when I actually could get to those more dynamic activities, I was in a lot better situation and I lifted weights, which a lot of PT clinics don't really do that. There's like dumbbells and ankle weights, functional physical therapy where you're just like in a weight room and, doing way more functional movements versus,
Yep.
the
Yep.
more basic things. But yeah, so really my own life shaped me a lot as who I am as an athletic trainer at the same time. Makes me have a lot of perspective for the different types of patients I've seen over the years
It
as
gives
well.
you empathy for the patients as
Yeah.
well. That's true. Well, and it's funny how many of us end up in the field because of personal injuries. So you were already in the field. You just had a little more
Yeah.
exposure
Yeah.
for the second round. Yeah. So from ESPN, you went, it looks like to kind of a smaller school setting, if I'm correct, and then teaching assistant at George Mason University. How did you fall into those two areas?
So my next job was working part-time in an all-boys boarding school as the only female on staff. I lived there, the students lived there. That was a really unique experience, because I worked like, the athletic trainer at the time left mid-year, and I was already there part-time. This was right after ESPN, and then they gave me the position, and I'm actually still the only female that has ever worked there.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, I'm
That's a
still.
nod. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's hard. It was really hard being a female, a young female, right out the gate, trying to command a lot of men, to kind of I compare it to some of the seniors in that setting, in that really, like, boarding school setting, they can actually repeat their senior year so that they can get into some of these collegiate the Ivy League schools. And so the age gap between me and some of the students was maybe 2, 3 years, which is not a lot of years in order to really, hold down the fort as a young female AT. So I learned real quick how to command a room and how to take hold of situations because, young boys are young boys. So
So
I
true.
was,
So true. Yeah. I work at an all
um,
boys high school, so I understand that.
yeah. And so, like, I was, like, chaperoning prom, like, "Whoa, like, what is happening there?" I had, like, the local girls' school come over, and they stayed because my home was, like, right above my office. I just, like, walked downstairs to my I was above the gym, and that's where the training room was at the time. That was Woodbury Forest. It's, like, Orange, Virginia. It's, like, kind of near, like, Charlottesville. It's not that far away. So I did that for a year, and I worked a lot and kind of got burnt out just in that year because it's such a unique setting. They also make you work through summer, in summer camps, and I was just like, I kind of want some more work-life balance.
And I'm
And
going to
that,
presume that you're on at all times in that kind of setting because you're on campus nonstop
yes,
and
exactly.
you're available for any situation, I would presume.
Yeah, that's when I started working for a PT clinic, the Jackson clinics. They're really heavily based in the Northern Virginia area. That experience has shaped me the most of the type of clinician that I am.
And why is that?
I'll say in PT, there are really good PTs and probably not just with any field, there are really good ones. I feel like the people that started that company, like the president of that company, Richard Jackson, he pretty much wrote the manual on the SI joint. He pretty much bought out like like a surgical clinic, and so my whole foundation of like how I function is all about the core, like that I everything that I teach is from that, and so in order to work with the PTs, like you kind of had to be on the same level as them because like they just expected a lot from me. The way that that clinic worked is that you work with the therapist and they do the manual therapy and then they would pass them down to me to do all the rehab. Thankfully, they did trust me a lot to like they would tell me, "Hey, Katie, they need thoracic mobility," or "Hey, this," they would tell me what things to do because in Virginia, like legally speaking, like you technically can't come up with your own rehab program. You kind of have to follow out the guidelines of the PT. But they trusted me a lot. And honestly, they made me take a lot of classes. Like, so I was basically taking classes with all the physical therapists. And I'll never remember the first time I learned about a cervical snag. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Like, and the PT that I worked with, he was an ATC DPT, the manager of my clinic. He was my mentor. He was my boss. We stood right next to each other for many, many years. I was there almost 7 years, 6, 7 years. They just really held me to a high standard. And it was really stressful because it was like I had to learn all these new things that they don't touch on in school. I mean, your therapeutic exercise class in school is a semester. And there's just so much more to physical therapy. I mean, there's vertigo, there's lymphedema, there's so a lot of the therapists, whatever their specialty was, I was expected to be on the same level because I had to be able to talk to them about the things that they were specializing in because they passed their patient down. So one of the therapists I worked with, she's a lymphedema therapist, post-cancer lymphedema. So I had to learn how to do that. One of my other therapists was a vertigo therapist. So I had to learn that. One of my other therapists was pelvic floor therapist. So I had to learn that. And then they had, a lot of their PTs had OCS background. So helping them through that and learning all the stuff that they were learning, and then they would pass that information down to me. Through all of those experience, like most ATs don't have a women's health background like I do. Like I know exactly how to talk about the pelvic floor because I worked with the pelvic floor therapist. Those people just have impacted the amount of information I was exposed to. I've been taught by Stuart McGill at least 3 times. I've taken all of his classes because the owner of the PT company that I worked for was really good friends with him.
So you really became a well-rounded clinician during your
Yes.
time at Jackson Clinics. That's fantastic. That's
Yeah, and
so
then on the side, I was being a clinical instructor. I was a TA at George Mason, and then I would work for an elite lacrosse league, and then I also worked for George Mason because I didn't want to lose my evaluating skills, which is you don't use them when you work in the PT clinic. And then I pitched certain areas that I knew would make me a well-rounded athletic trainer. If you look at my resume, you're like, she's almost done everything. Like, what hasn't she done? And I did that on purpose. I knew very early on in my career that I needed to know all aspects of what an athletic trainer could do. And I just saw so many patients. And then one of my other therapists, she's an aquatic therapist. So I would do aquatic therapy. So I know all the aquatic stuff too. And so all those different experiences really, and I think like a PT, honestly, like a lot of the ATs that I work with, like surround myself around, I think a lot of them are like, how do you know that, Katie? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I guess I do know, but I didn't realize how much information was being pumped into my brain. I know that's why I am the way that I am because that experience impacted. I mean, I was there for a long time too. I
that type of
mean,
exposure really allows you to grow as a
yeah.
clinician, which allows you to become a better specialist.
And then the coolest thing from that job is that the owner of the PT company, he started a PT program in Africa.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so he would go down. This was like his special project. He would go down to Africa and start like 'cause there. I can't remember what it was, but it was basically like their physio program is equivalent to like just an associate's degree in Africa, whereas we're a DPT. And so he started creating a bachelor's program, and then he created a master's program, and then he would send us like the people that worked at the company down there to be like teachers. And I'll never forget the day that he asked me to go down there as an athletic trainer. I was one of the first athletic trainers he asked to go down to Africa to teach therapeutic exercise. So that I went down there for 2 weeks and I taught people from Africa about therapy. Like that had molded me as a human. I mean to go and be able to teach people about what I'm really passionate about, and for a physical therapist to trust me enough to be a subject matter expert in there when PTs could go down there and do that. He asked me, I felt honored, and it was really a truly life changing experience. So I did that, and that was really really cool.
That is a phenomenal opportunity. And just, wow, giving back in that way is
I
just
still
awesome.
am close
Just
with all
awesome.
those people too. Like I talk to them all the time. Check in with them, see how they're doing. We chat about life, but not only just like clinical stuff. And it was just at that point in my career, I was getting a slightly burned out. Working in a PT clinic is hard. Volume of patients it's a lot. At one time, I was working with 4 therapists, so that meant like every 30 minutes, 4 new patients were being passed down. So in a 12-hour day, I think at one point I saw 60 patients in a day, and I'm expected to care and really. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but the ones that are the hard ones are my favorite. But
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're
they
challenging
require the most
mentally,
mental
physically.
energy.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Got to
And
agree
I
with
could
you on
see
that one.
anywhere from pediatrics all the way up to like geriatrics, because it was outpatient physical therapy. So that whole experience in my life,
Now,
yeah.
I'm gonna guess that that experience really led to your next adventure, and that's really what I'm gonna call it. You get a little smile on your face and you're smirking, you know where I'm going. We saw this on your resume and went, what? You got to be kidding me. Oh my goodness.
It's a funny story.
Athletic trainer at the basic school. And you sit there going, what the hell is that? Well, then we say at Quantico.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you that, well, are into any type of history or any type of government or any type of anything, Quantico, you know what that is. And if you
Yeah.
don't, you're about to find out. So tell us, how did you end up at the basic school at Quantico and how did that evolve? And well, first off, let everybody know what Quantico is.
Yeah. So while I was at the PT clinic, we got a work hardening contract that worked with the local FBI academy, which is at Quantico. When they would get hurt, they would send them to our clinic because it wasn't that far in distance. And I ended up working with all these tactical police officers, firefighters, and I was obsessed. It
Oh yeah,
changed
how
me.
could you not be? Yeah.
I, at that point, I was like, I hate rehab. I hate being an athletic trainer. I'm not cut out for this. Like, where do I go from here? And then I started seeing those patients, and I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. This is what enriches my, because like their job is essential to like who they are, and so their willingness to go back to their job was so much higher than some of the other patients, like whether they're at PT to get an MRI, or they're just there because insurance is making them be there, or you have a high school kid that doesn't really know why they're there, but you're still having to work with them versus when you work at the high school level. um and so yeah, I just kind of was like, how do I figure, at one point I considered being a firefighter. Like, one of my patients at the time considered, like, was like, you should be a firefighter, Katie. And I was like, what? Literally applied to the fire like academy. And then I started working with more of these patients, and they just started getting better. And then it was just, I was like, I need to do this. And then I got on Indeed. I saw the job for Quantico. I applied. Honestly, I wasn't really, I had enough experience at that time, like overall athletic training experience, which I think is why they considered me for the job. Because typically for military type tactical jobs, you need 5 years of experience. They prefer a master's degree, even though it's not needed. A lot of them need CSCS. A lot of them want like D1 collegiate experience. So I had D1 experience from a PRN standpoint, because that's why I kept all those other jobs while I was working at the PT clinic. So it's like I over the 5 years I was working there, I probably had enough experience and just total experience to be able to be a part of that job. And I interviewed for the job and I got the job. And Quantico is a military base. It's The FBI Academy is there. The basic school is a Marine Corps training command that all officers have to go through in order to be a Marine. And then you have the other side of Quantico, which is OCS is there, a lot of other Navy based areas. Quantico in general is a very high ranking place because officers go through there, and the Marine Corps is really small. So Quantico is a really big deal in the Marine Corps because it's kind of headquarters for like the entire country. Um, and we're just in the DC area. And when you're in the DC area, everything's very governmental, and you're not far. So it's a lot of stuff happening in that Northern Virginia, Quantico area. So I got a job working with the Marines that are going through basically officer basic training. You're there for 6 months, and you go through a slew of training. And I was one of the people that worked there. I loved it. I still look back on that job and I'm like, that's the best job I've ever had. I loved it. And it just sold me for the military setting. I just, at that point, I knew, I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. I was so good at it. And honestly, in the military setting, if you don't have a really good rehab background, because of how much autonomy you get as an athletic trainer in the military, that you would like a lot. It's hard to be good at rehab in athletic training because of usually the volume of patients that you're seeing. And so you can do little things here and there, but it's like, what can we throw at this to get you back in the fight as quickly as possible? Whereas this process is a lot slower. And so if you really can't handle a patient from before injury to injury through their entire injury, post surgery, post surgical, return to play, most athletic trainers don't have that much hands in that person's plan of care through that whole process. And I did that every day when I worked in the PT clinic. I saw them obviously post surgical typically through their plan of care, but being an athletic trainer, you also see a lot of the other side of it. So like all these experience that I have kind of led me to be very successful at this Quantico job. I hiked with them. I saw so many emergency things that I wasn't used to. I'll be honest, I had to go home and study because I was so rusty at my evaluation. And the way that it works there is like sick call is from 6 to 8 o'clock. You have 5 minutes to do a complete eval and then get them in rehab so that they are good enough to go back to training and they don't need some sort of modification to their training. So you're making a lot of really important calls. You're ordering X-rays, you're ordering MRIs, you are making the call, which is a lot of responsibility. But that experience pretty much gave me the confidence of why probably I am as confident as I am because of the amount of responsibility you get when you work in that type of role. It'd be hard for a new grad to do something like that. I mean, I had almost 7 years at that point. And in my opinion, that's where you really start to find your niche as an athletic trainer.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
And so I was confident enough to be able to and you're dealing with a lot of men too, and just people with complicated histories, too. And so, yeah, I love that job. It was a really great job. It made me a way better and I worked, my boss, who actually is still there, she had her DAT and she honestly made me a better AT. She had very high standards and it made me better.
Elevate your knowledge, ignite your curiosity, and compete with the best minds at events hosted by the American Academic Competition Institute. AACI's sports medicine competitions feature practical exercises, challenging quizzes, specialty tests, and keynote speakers that foster knowledge and social engagement in healthcare and sports medicine. Go to aacitest.org for more information on upcoming regional and national competitions. Sign up for the ultimate intellectual showdown.
And she's the one that convinced me to go get my master's degree. Because I was
Cool.
so against getting a master's degree. And
why were you against getting a master's degree?
I was convinced that you wouldn't get paid more, which is in fact true. I don't think that
I can't argue that. Yep.
I can't agree that I think that an entry-level master's degree has gotten us more pay. I think it gets us more respect. I think in healthcare, for me at that time, it was like, what can I get a degree in the shortest period of time with the least amount of debt? So I went to a post-professional athletic training program. I had to go away for 2 weeks and do anatomy and physiology again. And then, which I did a lot better the second go around, honestly. And then it was 11, 12 months. It was 45 credits. And I did that while I worked full time.
And which program was that? Where was
it? Was
that?
Indiana Wesleyan University.
Of course.
Love that. I had such a great experience. Still friends with a lot of the people out of that program. I was one of the older athletic trainers. Most of those ATs literally went from their bachelor's to that entry. So I was old too. I was one of the few that had a lot of experience in the field. And honestly, that experience gave me a lot of confidence too, because I used to think I was really bad at school and I crushed my master's degree. They were like, Katie, you're so good. It's because I had real life experience to argue and base my opinion off of it. It wasn't just in theory. How do you argue this with research as well? Evidence-based, stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember, getting that degree and I was like, I just didn't think I was going to be good at school. And I did really, really well. I think my GPA was not a 3.7 or something.
It's amazing when you find what you love. If you go back to school again, how well you do.
So much better.
Yep. I understand that.
That's kind of Quantico. Yeah, it was It was fantastic.
That just sounds
Had
like
to
an
do
amazing
CPR there.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, had to do CPR on a student. That was life changing. A lot of heat and cold cases because they're out in the field for a long time. I saw a femur fracture. I saw a lot of stuff I was not used to seeing. Even when I worked at the high school, Woodbury Forest, our quarterback dislocated his knee and actually lost his limb. Um,
Oh, that's always a fear. I hate
yeah,
to say it.
yeah, he had actually a full ride to UVA, and I think they still gave it to him after that. It was a huge story. He had already that wasn't when it happened. Like that didn't happen while I was there, but he was a senior when I was there. So just dealing with that and like being a young kid and having to overcome all of that, that was a really interesting experience that also kind of molded my ability to work with mental health and when something really tragic happens to you. Same thing with TBS, the basic school. That was another component to it, and just how you would take care of someone for that long. I mean, so those patients, I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of them because, I mean, they were in my care for a year and a half.
It becomes part of your life at that point, not
Yeah,
just a patient. Yeah.
yeah, no, you create like very special bonds with those students because they're there for so long. And then I guess you could be like, well, why did you leave, Katie?
Why did you leave?
Yeah, met my husband, and he is a Marine Corps Osprey pilot, and he had the PCS.
Very awesome.
Yeah,
And tell him thank you. Tell him
thank
thank you.
you.
Yep.
Actually, yesterday was his first flight in the Osprey. He is stoked. I'm so proud of him. I mean, it's been a long time coming for him. So for him to actually go and fly the gray thing in the sky is a really, really big deal.
Tell him congratulations too, along with the
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yeah. Which so then that moved me down to Florida. Worked for the Andrews Institute. I don't know if people are familiar with the Andrews Institute.
Actually, many of us are. I'm very familiar with the Andrews Institute.
So they're kind of one of the I wouldn't say they are the mecca, but they are one of the meccas of sports medicine. Dr. Andrews in the top, he was like the team physician for the Redskins, team physician for Alabama. A lot of athletes come through those doors. So honestly, I really just needed a job, and it was the high school outreach. And honestly, I didn't want to go back to the high school setting, but it was like I needed a job. I was like, I'll do it again, and we'll see how it goes. Really loved the kids. I always knew I liked the kids. I just didn't like the hours of the job.
I
Uh,
understand that all too well.
yeah, so it was kind of just like I knew I was gonna have to like not be there long term just because I knew. And then I ended up applying for a residency program. I was like, I haven't really worked in a doctor's office. I should probably like do that at some point to see because in
Let's round
theory,
off that resume even more.
yeah, I was like, let's be a physician. And back then it was called like a physician extender.
Oh God, yes, I remember that.
And so I was like, in theory, I always thought that that's what I wanted because of the schedule being more, but I actually work a lot in that role too. So it really depends on where you are at life at that time. So I did a residency with the Andrews Institute and learned how to do grafts in the OR, suturing, be the first assist, OTC stuff. Really, all of that. That was one of the hardest jobs I've ever had in my life. Like working in the OR. That I don't know how to. I didn't know half of the stuff that I think the orthopedic surgeon needed me to know. Like in theory, you know kind of what happens with the rotator cuff. Like, but like when you're actually like seeing it in the OR on the screen, it's just a different experience. So like, I mean, I saw so many surgeries. I mean,
Little
I
difference from going through a cadaver to a human being that's in the middle of repair.
yeah, and then also like holding the tools while you're doing surgery on someone, insane to me. I don't know. And actually like preparing a graft that you put back in someone's leg, that's crazy. Uh So that was a really that experience. I'm really glad I had one. It made me understand rehab a lot better because I saw it from the front end, and it gave me an idea of how surgeons think, and then how that translates into like your plan of care for your rehab. Um, and just seeing those two relationships differently from different sides of the coin, doing both of those jobs. I knew I needed to get back to the military. It was like aching my soul, and ended up getting a job with the Air Force.
Is that Eglin Air
Yep.
Force Base? Yeah, there we go. Because it looks
Yeah.
like you've done a couple since then, actually, and
Yeah.
Camp Lejeune in North Carolina.
Yep. The Air Force was really cool because I was working with pilots and my husband was a pilot. And so it just hit a little bit differently. And when you work with pilots, their injuries are a lot different than typical injuries that ATCs. Like ATCs typically are extremity based injuries, whereas a lot of pilots are cervical and lumbar. So let's bring it back to my role in the PT clinic. They bought a rehab clinic for back pain and the spine. Basically, they bought out a spine clinic and then started a rehab clinic. And that's why like the spine is my specialty because of all of those experiences that I went through when I worked at the Jackson clinics. So like understanding the cervical spine, most ATs can handle the cervical spine, but I think there is a little hesitation about it because it can be dangerous. So like from a manual therapy standpoint, I know I could almost fix anything in the cervical spine, and which is very useful because pilots have a lot of chronic cervical spine issues. And we know a few things to get by, and then you have all your soft tissue stuff, right? You have all of that. But yeah, I was really successful there because they're like, how do you like know how to do all this stuff? And I'm just like, you see, working at Quantico and working at the PT clinic, those two jobs, like I've seen it all. I've done it all. Just in the years of just seeing so many patients. Loved working for the Air Force. That was a really cool job. And then had to leave that job because my husband PCS to
And PCS stands for
I don't know what PCS stands for, but he basically got orders to move to a different location.
transfer over. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I forget what PCS stands. There's so many acronyms in the military.
And then we ended up in Camp Lejeune working.
Yep. Yep. And pretty standard, used to it, worked for the Marine Corps, understand the structure of the Marine Corps. Um, the cool thing about my job at Camp Lejeune was I helped start a human performance center.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was the
Very
big,
nice.
big thing. It was a big deal because the Human Performance Center was paid for out of that unit's pocket, whereas a lot of funding comes from like, headquarters and then they start these programs. But the 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 colonel, the actually the general, it's a one-star general that's over that entire unit, really was passionate about. There was all these people that were getting out because of injuries, or there were a lot of people were on limited duty, and so really investing in the Marine being the weapon, right? And the pillars of what make mental resiliency, all of those things. And so we were on a different contract, but we were already there, so we kind of helped out, like create a lot of those programs. And my biggest thing as an AT is teaching, education. It's Most people don't even know what their four core muscles on, let alone how to isolate each one and then be able to use that in a functional activity. So really walking through why this is happening, why this is important at this time, and then for them to understand their own bodies and be responsible for what impacts their chief complaint. You're telling me this is bothering you. I'm giving you the tools, and I want you to understand what tools to use at what time so that you can manage your own body and you don't need me anymore. That's the true win for me and as an AT, is when I can have a patient label all four core muscles, where they are, how to use them, and when at what times to fire what muscles for what activity that you're doing.
Okay, now say those four muscles for all our listeners.
So the four core muscles are your multifidus, your pelvic floor, your transverse abdominis, and your glutes. All four of those have to work together in order to brace deep core. The amount of people that don't know that, even other people in the profession, I think that I knew transverse abdominis was important. No one talks about the multifidus. and why that's important. I think people know it's a back muscle, but I don't think really people correlate it with their core muscles. And then, everyone thinks rectus abdominis is a core muscle. People think obliques, so just really educating people on that and then showing them how to do it and then giving them the basis of, what are the basic things that you can do. And then once you do those, and then obviously soft tissue, mobility, flexibility, all of those things. I'm not going to waste my time teaching you how to stretch. I'm just not going to. Like, I will show you how to do it properly, but I expect you to do that on your own. A big piece for me that I learned at the PT clinic is self-efficacy. If you do not have that, then we have a problem. I'm not going to throw stem on you. I am not going to do cupping, dry needling. Like, I can do all of those things, but at the end of the day, those do not fix the problem at the heart of the issue, which is understanding your own body and how to utilize it.
Well, I just love the comment, and I hear it all the time at our clinic. But I've got a 6-pack. I've got an 8-pack. My core is
Oh my
strong.
God.
Oh God, dude, no, come on.
Don't even get
It,
me started on that. I
uh,
mean, Marines
uh,
are like that too.
yeah.
They look super fit. Why do they have back pain? Well, I always I ask them, well, what do you think your core is? Like, define that for me. And they are like, well, I have a 6-pack. I'm like, unfortunately for you, actually, none of those are your core muscles, even though they're located in the same area as one of your 4 core muscles. And hearing that, they're like, mind blown. Like,
You're
and
speaking
so,
another language. You're from a planet. Yeah, what's going on
yeah.
here? No way, no way.
And so during the human performance, they were like, well, how can the ATs help? I'm tired of being stretching, warming up, cooling down, foam rolling. It's so much more than what we are. It drives me nuts. Like, you're not anyone can be a subject matter expert at that. Me being an athlete trainer, that is not that special of information, in my opinion. Like, I'm sorry. Like, foam rolling, and plus, at the end of the day, you could teach that all day long. Because most people in the military, I feel like they think, oh, warm ups, cool downs, foam rolling, and then I'll be good. That's what ATs teach us, and it's like, nah, that's
So
not
much
it.
more. So much more
It's
than
not
that.
it. And so I wanted to create classes where I was teaching them, and then we would go out in the gym and do all the exercises properly. Because the amount of times I've seen someone do clamshells incorrectly really irks me. I'm a form I'm very oriented with form. Like, I will correct you. I can see it like in 4 seconds. And it's because I worked at the PT clinic and had 10 people and had to have a very high level of like correctness. And that's what the PT is very much helping. They're like, hey, they're not in neutral while they're doing that. So you're not really activating, and so there's a lot of that. When I worked at the Air Force too, I helped create that human performance as well. So very involved with human performance. That's where my passion is. I love it. All of the things that encompass human performance, mental, physical, spiritual, social, physical, like all of that stuff is just right up my alley. And so I was really proud of the HPC that I was a part of in the military. But it's hard because we couldn't force them to take the classes. So then people wouldn't show up. And then once they started, because as soon as one person saw my class, they were like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. Like, and I'm like, go tell your friends. Like, we tried to almost have them go to our classes first and then come in for direct rehab care, but it was like hard for their commands to let them out of class to go, or out of their workday to go to class, even though that's actually what they needed. Because most people don't understand that the education piece of it is actually the most important piece of the puzzle, along with strength and conditioning to work alongside one another.
And it doesn't matter at what level or what setting you're at. 90% of our job is education.
And I'll just remember like talking to like the younger enlisted ranks, and like they have had no one they were like, wow, this girl really cares about actually educating us. You know what I mean? Like, you could see it in their eyes. They're like, why has no one told us this? Like, they just the light bulbs are going off. And I get like so amped up and so excited when like they finally get it. And they can actually, so by the end of the class, I was like, all right, guys, let's go over the 4 core. What are they? So we would go over each core muscle, how to isolate a lot of information about general low back information, hinging versus squatting, and what your goals are for your working out. And there's no exercise that's better than another. And it's really dependent on what your chief complaint is, where you want to go back to. And so all of those things kind of were the HPC. And I was so proud of that. It was just really cool to create those programs. I loved it. I just going out there and teaching, because that's really what everyone really needs. That's because everyone thinks, so better workout programs, eating, helping, that will fix the military, which it's definitely going to help for sure. But I think at the end of it, just that little education on the front end, I think really would make a huge difference, because my patients always got better. I'm like, I don't want to, like, I'm over here making patients better. And then we still have all these people that don't have the foundations down prior to like lifting and doing all of that stuff. And then in the Marine Corps specifically, a lot of them are endurance athletes, but they train super heavy, and that doesn't really make sense for when they have to run a 3 mile. I'm like, you don't need to lift super heavy. You need to lift moderate load over a long period of time. And then
You're
understanding.
now you're just talking crazy though. I mean, come on.
I know. And so that was a really big deal, just trying to create that program. I loved it. It was a really good experience. It made me, I still love it. There's a piece of me that if I go back, I don't, I'm going to have to go back clinically at some point. It's just a matter of when I do it, because it's who I am. It's really hard for me to not see patients.
I understand that all too well.
And so, yeah, I ended up leaving that job to kind of where I am now, because in government contracting, unfortunately, it's not as secure, and there's always Bridget. So the way that it works is, a new contract can get awarded, and then it can get protested. And that did happen. The athletic trainers on base, like, all had to get like sent home because the contract got, there was issues with contracting, and that put in a stop work order, and then the athletic trainers got sent home until they could figure
Oh,
it out at the
oh,
government level. So there's a lot of uncertainty in government contracting. And so if I had stayed, I would have been probably out of work for a couple of months. They went back to work, and then they got sent home again. So that, I've never seen that happen in all my 6 or 7 years now at this point working in the military setting. So, I took that into consideration when I took this job. Um, and I thought I needed a break at the time. That's kind of how I landed into this role. And honestly, I wasn't even looking for a job. Someone put my name in the hat. They called me up. I considered the offer. I have a 2-year-old, and my husband's a pilot, and his schedule is really, really not controlled at all. So it's like,
unpredictable to say the
yeah,
least. Yes.
exactly. And so it was hard on our family to try to constantly figure out. It was frustrating at the time, because when I was creating the whole HBC, like, I straight up briefed the commandant of the Marine Corps, the assistant commandant of the Marine Corps. Like, these are high level, 4-level generals, like, that I'm having to brief about all the HPC stuff. I briefed a lot of really important people. Um, it's not that it's not cool that they're important. It was just like, to the Marine Corps, like, this is so essential and so important to like help our service members. I'm really passionate about helping people who protect us. So one, my husband is one, but also, like, even before I met my husband, like, it's always been something that just really, I feel like, passionate about, that I need to, that's a patient population I would like to serve.
They serve us, so we should serve them.
That's exactly how I look at
Yep.
it.
Yep.
So with that, that's kind of Katie in a nutshell. um, and then talent acquisition is really cool too. I really like it. I love talking to other athletic trainers in the profession. The construction industry is crazy. It's just controlled chaos. I don't even want to say controlled, but it's chaos in all the best
Somewhat
way
controlled. There you
possible.
go.
In all the best way possible. Like, it's just, one day, I want to say, like, right now I have, I don't know, 17 roles open. I don't know, it's a lot. In 17 different states. So
So if anybody's out there thinking about industrial, get a hold of Katie.
that's right. Lots of really cool options. I mean, if you're thinking about competitive pay, the type of company that I work for, work-life balance, all of those things, we really do offer that. And really just a team that understands what you do, I think, are like the biggest pieces. Um, But yeah, talent acquisition is really cool. I love talking to other athletic trainers. I've come across so many people that I know. I don't know how that's possible, but like someone's resume will show up on my desk and I'll be like, I know that person. Or, you know, I try to be really involved on LinkedIn. Networking is really fun. I've always loved networking. I'm a talker. So
Network always pops up in every episode. So important for all of us.
yeah.
Network, network, network.
So I love that aspect of the job too. So it's a little bit about me. And when I say it all out loud, it's like, wow, I really have done a lot of weird, cool things. It's weird to talk about. Like, I think I'm cool, but it's like weird when someone else was like, no, you are cool. And I was like, wait, what? Um,
I know we both have a day to get to, and I don't want to take too much of your time. But one last question for you. If
yeah.
you could look at Katie 15 years ago and give her a piece of advice, what is something you would say to that young professional getting into into the athletic training field to help her on her way?
Hmm. It's a good question. I definitely give advice to a lot of younger ATs just in talent acquisition, just to be like a friend in the profession. But what I would say is from a professional standpoint, advocating for myself a little bit more effectively with pay and work-life balance. I kind of just accepted whatever I got and did it. And then when it wasn't working for me, I figured it out in a different situation because I will never stay in something that doesn't make me happy. I just don't work like that. So definitely doing a little bit more of that. And obviously confidence, but I don't know how much confidence you can get until you actually like work, that gives
So
you confidence.
true. So true.
So I don't know how I would have more just out the gate. I said yes to a lot of things. So I would say to other ATs too, just to say yes more often, and not have so many restricting boundaries on what your possibilities are. A lot of the ATs that I talk to, even in talent acquisition, are like, oh, I don't want to move out of where I live. And they've been home their whole life. And I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, go spread your wings, experience life. Like, because I didn't have the industrial opportunity when I was coming out of school. Like this wasn't a thing. If this was a thing when I was in school, coming out of school and early into I would have jumped on it in a second, moving around and experiencing different places and a different setting.
That's the time you should, right? Right
That's
out
what
of
I do.
school. It's a great opportunity. Really
Don't
get to know.
pigeonhole yourself,
Yep.
you
Get to know
know?
who you are and what you can do, what you're
Yeah.
able to do.
And really try to maximize your experiences while you're doing it. Like just be a sponge, learn as much as you can. Always be your best. Always be open to learning new things.
Be a sponge. I like that. Be a sponge.
Yeah, that's the most important. And then realize that even if you are really smart, there's always someone smarter than you. And to just really take in and observe and learn from other people. Because I feel like that's the only reason why I'm successful is because I worked with people that are a lot smarter than me that made me better.
That's great advice, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for being on our episode of Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. This was so fun. I love it when I can just sit down, ask a couple questions, and let the guest go because it's so educational for so many people. And I've learned more in the last year doing these episodes than I ever knew about our profession. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You have a great day. Have a great upcoming weekend. And thanks for being on Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. Have a great day.
See ya.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Want to make sure you hear every episode? Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast. Don't forget to share our podcast with your colleagues, family, and friends. Your support will help more people find and enjoy our content. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is directed by Eli Hallak. It is produced by Gabriel Hallak. Our theme music is by Coma Studios via Pixabay. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the contributors. Want to know more about us? Visit us at wrapituppodcast.com. That's with 1P, wrapituppodcast.com. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is a production of Hallak Consulting, LLC.